want to promote your business? Do you want to talk about your nonprofit organization? Do you want to talk about your culture? Introducing the online web TV, Afrique Today. We are live every Sunday at 3 p.m. You can watch us live at the same time on 4 platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and using the Afrique Today app. Download our app today for Android or Apple. Promote your business today. For more information, go to www.afriquetoday.com. Afrique Today, the best of digital TV. In today's world, video is the most effective content. In 2021 alone, 80% of all content consumed by users was video. If today you don't make video about yourself, about your product, you're losing positions in your business. Afrique Today Production invites you to create a video of any complexity. Are you an aspiring blogger, artist, musician, and you want to surprise your audience? Or are you an ordinary person and want to create a family story? Then our team will be able to create a video for you with unique quality, reported shooting, individual shooting, studio shooting, entertainment videos, corporate events. All this we can do for you in the best quality. Just call now and get a 30% discount at 571-612-0496. 571-612-0496. Afrique Today, the best of digital TV.
And now, all the time. I cannot hear.
Introducing the online web TV, Afrique Today. We are
Hello and welcome. There was a few technical difficulties a few minutes on my end. I think I have my mic muted. I hope you can all hear me now, but I want to say hello, happy Friday. I am your host, Dr. Yvette Butler-Yeboah. We want to welcome you to The Voice of American Africans United. And I am here with my co-host, my guest co-host, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Paul Dyer again with me again this week. And, you know, you are a really good addition to me. You know, I tell you, you do so much for our show. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. But we have a great show today. And so, Paul, you want to tell them a little about what we're going to be talking about today? And we're going to have somebody special coming on.
Thank you, Dr. Yvette Boa. We have to give you congratulations of being such a wonderful, beautiful human being on this planet that's doing so much for our kids, our people, and just on different continents. So give yourself a hand. Don't let yourself ever go unnoticed, because without you, you're a shining light. You're a bright star in our community. So thank you so much. But what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking with Marc Elrich. And Marc Elrich is the county executive of Montgomery County here in Maryland. Most people say, well, what's Maryland? Well, let's go with this. Montgomery County is the largest county in Maryland. That
Yep.
says a lot ever since that Maryland's the richest state in the United States. So when you understand those two factors, the largest county in Maryland and the richest state in the United States, what are we doing? What can we do? What should we be doing? And what has been done is a great question.
And that's true. And it's interesting for this show. And I want to tell my audience, I want to thank all of you who sent your questions in early. So we would definitely get to your questions first, because I know you're here to hear your questions, but we have a lot of questions also to ask of our county executive, especially in an election year. I mean, this is very interesting. We have so many people running, and this is not just a political show to promote Marc Elrich, but really to find out what he's done for Montgomery County, and and basically what he's going to do further. So let's have a little dialogue and tell him a little bit more about Marc, because before he comes on, because he'll be coming on pretty shortly, and we will have our county executive on with us. And the reason why our show started a little bit later today than our original 7:00 as we do is because he has another event that's ongoing. So I'm excited that he'll be able to get us in, and we'll have a little time with him this evening. Also, remember, if you're on Facebook Live and also YouTube, you can also ask your questions online tonight. We don't have a call-in number, so really sorry about that. But if your question did not get in earlier and you want to have a question sent in, please put your question in on Facebook Live or YouTube. My producer would definitely get those questions over to us so we can ask our county executive live for the show tonight.
Here's the other thing, Dr. Yvette, is that what's with having the county executive? You said it's not a political show, so it's an informational show. But this is an African station. This is what you call African Black, African American station. So we have more African American viewers listen to us than any other station that's being broadcast. So we're actually talking to African American voters, people who are concerned about certain things that affect them personally, not just because it's Montgomery County, but them personally because they're African Americans. That's a different take on when you have other shows that speaks to so many different diversities. This is specific. So things have to be said specifically for us. We make up 18% of the population in Montgomery County.
That's true. That's true. And we're a growing population. And Montgomery County was considered it's actually a majority minority county, but we don't really see that in our representation of our county when we talk about elected officials. And that's at every level.
That's because it's 18%. When you say 18%, I can literally ignore you and still win. I can literally disregard anything of your concerns and still win by the white vote, the Latino vote, and the Asian vote. I don't need the Black votes to win. So I think that plays a part on what doesn't get done, what has gotten done, and what will never get done, even though we keep begging and asking for it.
I'm just thinking, what the county exec or with anybody in this political realm, how do we get what we need with such a small minority?
When you talk to people who are in political power and political seats who say they work for the population, that means they work for the populace.
Yes, that's true.
That's it. It's not they don't work for people, they work for the populace. And the populace who pays more than the populace, not the populace, but the populace. I don't need to listen to people if they're less of the population. I can appease them, but I don't have to listen to them.
That is so true. And so we hope tonight that we'll get some recognition on, having people listen more to us and seeing how we can hopefully move that needle in our direction. So tonight we have a lot of questions that came in from the African and African American community. So that's really great. I don't think I had any questions that didn't come in from our communities that really wanted to hear about what what this county executive can do and has done for us. So I'm excited. So I'm going to text to make sure how much longer, because he should be coming on right now. But go ahead.
Well, let me ask you something, Dr. Yvette, and probably put you on I'll put myself on the hot seat. Here's the thing: when it comes to being transparent, and I think we have to learn how to be transparent as hosts, or we say, is if you're going to welcome someone in your house, you want them to be felt at home, but you don't want to be what you call a fake person that invites you into the house. So to be transparent, I think I'm very hard on the county executive because of things that I felt he could have done better, and that's personally. And I'm not a public official. I think there's things that's not being addressed that needs to be addressed, that I think should be addressed. I think there's issues that I am unsettled with that has not ever been talked about publicly. Now, here's the thing. He's not the lone wolf, right? We have to say that when you're in public seating, or you're in a chair, a county executive, there are departments, there are councilmen, there are committees, there are all kinds of people who are not doing the job I think they should be doing better. That's just plain and simple. So he's not the one that says he's the end to be all, right? Right? There's other ways of getting through this, and they're not doing a good job either, I don't feel, right? And I'm starting to feel, and I've said this on many other shows, I'm starting to be on the transparent, being very transparent, saying re-elect no one. Let's start over. Let's get this thing moving in a better direction. I know this is a big boat to steer, but re-elect no one, and let's see if we can get better. That's all.
Well, until Mark comes on, I want to ask, because he's on his way now. They said in just a minute, but I want to take a step on something, what's happening in this country so far today, as far as the shootings and the gun violence. And that's some of the questions I was asked too as well. Now, we talk about gun violence, and they talk about removing guns and getting away with guns and gun control. But every time someone says gun control, more people, white people, go out and buy guns. That's the first and foremost thing. They go out and buy more guns. And when they talk about gun control, in my impression, they're talking about taking away guns from those who look like us. And then lastly, I don't think it's about the guns. I think it's really the person behind the gun. And
I do.
What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I like I said, I'm very transparent on what I do. I am a gun person. I am a gun enthusiast. I'm a shooter enthusiast. I am a hunter, hiker. I am a protection artist. I'm a safety expert. I have no problems with guns. Absolutely none. I'm the guy that could carry 1,000 guns in my house. I do not mind, because it's not the guns is the issue. It is not. It's the person that is pulling the trigger. It is the community. It is the community that's allowing them to pull the trigger. That's what I'm talking about. We have a community that is absent from recognizing each other. And until we recognize each other, we're going to always have the lone wolf, or the person who has lost their way, their emotional way, their spiritual way, their godful way, whatever it is, the way that keeps you on the peaceful way, they've lost their way. And here's the community that's the problem. How do you not notice your neighbor, your friend, your brother, your sister, your coworker, your cousin, anyone you come in contact with that you have not noticed they have lost their way and you did nothing? That seems to be a community issue. Now, we also know there's some mental health issues out there. We know that people are living in what you call 9% interest. We know that we're having $6 gas prices. We know that people are paying more money for food and getting less out of it. We're going into what you call the perfect storm of despair. So keeping the eye out on my brother and my sister, whomever they might be, is a community issue. It's a family issue. It's a relationship issue. We have so many people keeping their heads down that they're not relying on community to notice, are you okay? Have you been okay? And by the way, I kind of knew you just bought, $5,000 worth of guns recently, and you've never bought guns before. That should, something should like trigger a little fire piece. Oh, I didn't know, Paul, you were into grenade launchers and you pulled up a tank in your driveway. Is something going on? You know what I mean? This is something that we as a community, if we don't have hyper focus, hyper vigilance on each other, then these things happen. We always talk about guns and guns and guns. Let me tell you this, and I've been listening to the rhetoric on us side, the other side, and more sides. What's not been talked about are the bullets. I tell you what, I can have as many guns as I want in my house. If I don't have bullets, it's a paperweight. And bullets are expensive and hard to get. I know that because I'm an enthusiastic shooter. So there are times where there are certain rounds, that it is very difficult to get. So we can talk about guns all day long, but where are they getting the ammunition from? Are they making it in their homes? If they're making it in homes, it's like a meth lab. It's not like anyone can just make it. You got to have equipment to make it. You got to build a machinery to do this. So I hope I didn't take up too much of time. Did the county executive come on?
Yes, I think we have the county executive on now. And let's see if we can get Marc's picture up here, because Marc, we were just talking about gun control. And, that's a question I know you've gotten that question on some of the questions I sent you. So you get a list of questions beforehand. So can we bring our guest on tonight so we can start? We're going to start the show.
I think I'm here.
Wonderful. Oh, okay, wonderful. I don't see you yet, Marc. Okay.
I'm in this little box, it looks like, and I'm not driving, but I'm in a car.
Okay. Let's see.
Hi,
if we
Marc.
can get
Welcome.
Hey. I don't have a very grand background.
So I can see you as well. So Marc, thanks a lot. I know you squeezed this in because you had a busy schedule. But we want to thank you. We both want to thank you because as Dr. Dyer was saying, this show is one of the most highly watched shows within the African American community, as far as those of us, getting the information out, because we have live shows and we try to get the information out without filters. So, this is live, and so we're excited that you're able to come on and talk with us, because we have viewers, as you see, sent in questions. And so, actually, let's just go right into some of the questions. Now, I'm not sure if my audience can see our county executive yet, but I said, well, let me have Dr. Dyer introduce our county executive one more time, who he is. And then Marc, we're going to just start firing the questions, because we know you're busy. It's a crazy season. And so, it's a season to be remembered. Yep. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dyer.
Hey, welcome to Afrique Today, and we're having County Executive Marc Elrich. Marc Elrich is our County Executive of Montgomery County, which is, again, the largest county in Maryland, and Maryland's the richest state in the United States. So we will put those two pieces together. We're going to get right into the questions because Marc does hold a lot of key things, holds a lot of big purse strings. And like I said before Marc, you came on, I know everything doesn't stop or start with you, but you are part of a lot of things of how it happens. And so it's not like just because you say so or don't say so doesn't mean it happens or doesn't happen. Right. So if you want to talk about, because I know you're enthusiastic about Montgomery County, it's not short-sighted. So you want to talk about first what your plans are in this next term you plan on winning, or if you win, and then because I don't want to talk about the things you have done because those things are great, but it's time to move forward. So what's your moving forward strategy?
Well, I mean, there are a couple of things that we really want to focus on. We have, coming out of the pandemic, we put a lot of effort, even while we were in the middle of all this, to try to lay the groundwork for economic development in the county. And things are actually pretty good right now. There's like a record amount of lab space under construction. We've been able to attract new companies to come into Montgomery County. We've been very aggressive about courting them, very interested in bringing in, higher paid jobs than retail jobs, make it possible for people to earn a living. We've also need to make sure that people are trained. We could get a lot of jobs, but if they're not evenly distributed or people don't have access to them, it doesn't really benefit the whole community. So we need to make sure that they take care of everybody in Montgomery County. I always feel like anytime that we're having other people come in to do jobs that could be done here by residents here, we're not doing a service to the people who actually live here. We need to make sure more of our children, more of our young people are prepared. So we've made major changes in something called WorkSource Montgomery, and which used to be fairly ineffective and is now actually training hundreds of people, and not training them for minimum wage jobs, but actually the director is very dedicated to the approach of helping to upskill people so they could take some of the higher paid jobs. We've been working with Montgomery College. We're going to be opening an East Side campus to Montgomery College in the Route 29 corridor. We're going to bring that college within reach of the high minority communities within that corridor. In other places, the college is able to partner with high schools to give kids in high schools the opportunity. Montgomery College in the East County will be close to a couple of Montgomery County high schools over there. We want to build the same kind of links between the high schools and the college, so we educate more kids and we get them engaged earlier. The campus that Montgomery College is going to build, we're really working. I've been talking to the leadership of the college to make sure we put in training programs that actually focus on the pipeline of talent we need for a number of the big industries that are coming into the county. Make sure that folks over there can get the training and that the college is actually helping build that pipeline. And I know the college has increasingly been moving in the direction of certificates to making sure people get what they need to be able to get the higher skilled jobs. And we want to make sure we expand that and that the East County has the equal access to it as the other parts of the county. That's part of what we're doing. We've been working with WMATA to bring a life sciences center to White Flint. We have one in Shady Grove, but it's a series of office parks. And we know that in the changing landscape of the world, there's a real interest in life sciences being in more urban, amenity-rich environments, and White Flint offers the opportunity to do that. It sits on a metro. WMATA, has a consultant that told them that the highest and best use of their property is life sciences. So I'm excited about the opportunity to do that. And in conjunction with that, I've worked with the University of Maryland for 2 years. And we're in a position now where the university wants to bring over an academic program in artificial intelligence focused both on life sciences, hospitality, and also for our artificial intelligence companies in the county. So I'm very focused on trying to drive not only growth, but high value growth. You know, there's a difference between creating retail jobs and jobs in the scientific fields and the technical fields. And we really need to focus on that. And we need to make sure that the kids in the county of all colors, that no one gets left behind, that this is actually an opportunity for everyone. And we're very conscious of that. You know, we have a racial equity office. Go ahead.
When you said equity, here's the thing. Blacks is about 18%. We had talked about this before you got in here. We're about 18% in Montgomery County. We actually don't have a voice to the populist. So it's easy that we feel and have felt for a long time now that our voices aren't being heard because we don't have enough people to actually make a difference or to fill the pockets of people who are running or looking to have our vote. Because the truth is, mathematically, you don't need the black people's vote to win. So to pay attention to what their ills and ailments are can be an afterthought, and it has felt that way in the black community.
I hear what you're saying. You know, personally, for me, I mean, I've been involved in issues like affordable housing for decades. I've, helped people to keep them from losing their housing, worked with tenants in multiple buildings to prevent their displacement. I'm a champion of rent stabilization because I believe, that Montgomery County is at risk of pricing our minority communities out of the county. When, other people talk about affordable and market rate housing, they always forget that the income for African American and Hispanic households is about half the income for white and Asian households. So when you have programs and your programs don't include half the population, then something's seriously wrong with that. And that's why I've been having heartburn with the county's housing plans. You look at their Thrive 2050. You don't see anything about you don't see anything in there about dealing with low-income people.
No.
I'll bore you with the statistic if you bear with me. But here's the scary numbers. You got 30,000 residents earning $30,000 or less a year, paying 50 to 60% of their income on housing. They are pretty much all people of color. Mm-hmm. You've got another 20,000 earning up to $50,000. Pretty much all people of color paying 50 to 60% of their income on housing. None of them would qualify for a moderately priced dwelling unit program. This county talks about its MPDU program as if, we're the model of the nation. The model of the nation has 6,700 units in the program right now after 30 years. I don't exactly call that a model. And the county projects, in 2000, the county had about 43 or 40,000 naturally occurring affordable units, meaning they were affordable to this group of people who get MPDU housing. But they were affordable, but they weren't controlled, unlike MPDUs, which are controlled. Yep. That number has gone from 43 to down to around 22, and Park and Planning projects we lose another 11,000 naturally occurring units. Thrive doesn't even talk about this. So you've got plans here that just basically assume, I guess, that everybody disappears, which I'm sure there are people who probably wouldn't mind that. It's a problem when you can't plan for everybody. And that's, my frustration is we need policies that actually produce housing for people who need housing. And you shouldn't have to be a majority of the population or I don't know what an insignificant part of the population is. If you are here, you should have a voice. If you're here, people should be concerned about you. Anybody who knows me, and I know vets know me for a while, I never make a political calculation about how do I build enough votes to win. I'm focused on, and I've been the champion of people knowing they don't vote. I campaigned for tenants and went out, and reached out to them, knowing that I would get a very low turnout from that population. But I feel like they need to know what's going on and they need to be engaged. And I've always been willing to engage.
I think, and Dr. Yvette, I'll let you, but I think that people who work so much, earn so little, have a hard time hearing what you are championing for and what isn't being done. So I think that's where the pushback comes, because those people are on the buses, they're on public transportation, and they don't have time to be like, what is Mark doing for us today, because they're working 2 jobs. So that stuff gets missed. And the only thing that gets recognized, go ahead.
I think it's worse than that. You asked the question that's sort of like, how do you reach people, or, how do these people get a voice? I mean, and you asked about voter registration, and, what do you do? I'll venture to say this, and you guys can yell at me if you think I'm wrong, but, after 400 years of oppression and emancipation, which didn't really free people, and a civil rights legislation, which is good on paper, but didn't do a damn thing to change the economic circumstances of anybody who was descended from slavery. After all those years, it's hard to believe anybody's going to do anything. I've talked to people. It's like, what difference does it make if I vote? Who's really going to do something? And that's a problem. And nobody should have to wait till you're some kind of significant portion of the population for someone to say we need to do something. I've never operated that way. Like I said, I'll invest energy in a community, and I don't care whether they vote or not. I just care that I can try to do something to help them. And if they vote, that's great. I love it. And if they don't vote, it's still the right thing to do.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in here really quickly and ask some of the questions that some of the folks actually have sent in. Do we still have Mark online? Okay, there you go. Because now we can see it. Because and Paul, I wanted to ask some of the questions from what we sent in. And so I sent these ahead of time, Mark, so you kind of know the gist and the question. So I'll just ask a question, and hopefully you can respond very rapidly, because we have a lot more to get to that probably isn't on here as well. But I want to keep them in, I put them in categories like for civil rights. The first question that was sent in was from the African Voting Bloc. And that's a group of very active Africans who do vote. And so a question that they had was, Black and African Americans represent basically 18.6% of Montgomery County population. The state of Maryland has the highest incarceration rate in the nation of men aged 18 to 24, while the second highest incarceration rate for young men is in Mississippi. What is the county doing? And we've seen some of our young brothers and sisters being still locked up. What is the county doing to correct these statistics?
I think there are a combination of things that have to happen. I can't end the drug war. I would have ended it 30 years ago. It was the stupidest thing this country ever did. I can, guarantee you the white people didn't get treated the same way in the drug war as Black people got treated. And then, if you read the Nixon, Haldeman, or Ehrlichman comments, this is totally deliberate. Nobody's confused why this war was launched. But, you have just a disproportionate number of kids in jail for pot. And the problem with going down that road is, once you've given somebody a jail record, you've pretty much closed the door to them getting a job. I put in the ban the box legislation with Cherie Branson. Banning the box is great, but it doesn't mean you can't ultimately find out whether somebody had a criminal record. It just means you can't put it on an application. I think it's been good, and I think that we continue to hear that employers have hired people who they find out have backgrounds and have found them to be perfectly good employees, but we've ruined a lot of people's lives. And if you can't work, you will find other ways to meet your needs. And so, basically having a plan that turned people into unemployable and then being shocked and dismayed when people do things to acquire funding that we would prefer they don't do, it's kind of like a self-inflicted wound. So I'm hoping, that the state takes the necessary steps in a referendum to deal with the pot issue once and for all and put it to rest, and that they expunge. And I don't mean like tell people that you can get your record expunged. The state could expunge the records all by itself.
And
nobody should have to. Nobody should have to come and ask for it.
Nope.
That ought to be part of the bill. The state will expunge everything and then notify you that your record's been expunged. That would help. And it would help people to get employed. And we're going to have to do some restorative justice work, with people who've been left out and have done, repetitive things, because that's the life that they were kind of forced into. We're going to have to give them opportunities to restore themselves to doing things in society that are more productive for them and for everybody else. But that's, I think the drug wars are an enormous part of it.
When you talk about restorative justice, then we're talking about the judges that are giving these draconian sentences that are in Montgomery County that we still can't get away from. They're still allowing. There seems like we can do nothing about the judges that are giving these sentences, and yet the judges are still in the same huddle of thought. So they don't believe in restorative justice, at least the judges we have now in Montgomery County.
Well, but if you take away, once it's legal, and if you expunge your records, the judges will have nothing to do with it. I mean, nobody will be getting arrested at that point. I mean, our end, we have to do more, community work at deterrence. And we're going to build a restoration center. So the people who are in crisis, mental health crisis or a drug crisis, right now, the only place to go is a jail. Right. Our jail is the largest mental health institution in the county. We don't have the beds anyplace else. In truth, anybody with a mental health situation it's not supposed to be put in jail, but you would have to actually build a multi-hundred seat, even for Montgomery County, multi-hundred position alternative to a jail in order to get people the treatment they need. But we've got to start taking the mental health situation seriously. Our restorative justice, our first program will be smaller, but it's going to grow to a larger building and a larger program. I'm optimistic about that. We are diverting police from handling things like mental health crises. We're starting to field the mental health teams that will respond to people in crisis who aren't armed. I'm not going to ask people to deal with armed people without backup.
Right.
But for people who aren't armed, they'll be dealing with that. Homeless people, again, I don't know why the hell you'd haul a homeless person off to jail. What the heck do you prove? They're already homeless. They already aren't working. They're already struggling.
They're hauling people off to jail because no one's questioning their practices. It kind of goes back to the FBI just recently said what Maryland has more and doubled in the hate crimes in 2020. I know that's a question that came in. Is that right?
Yes.
That's not a number I haven't seen it specific for the Black community and hate crimes. I think nationally the hate crimes are still, I thought that the Jewish folks were getting, or organizations were getting probably the most hate crimes. Asians have seen a huge uptick in hate crimes. Thank you, Donald Trump. And of course, Donald Trump wasn't too good to the Black community either. I mean, we have demonized so many people and discredited them as human beings, which is kind of like the long-standing practice of slavery, right? It's hard for people to get out from under this.
Yeah,
so,
but actually, I was going to say, this is a report from the FBI that came out in September. So even though the hate crimes have ticked up on everyone else, the majority in the state of Maryland is still against Black folks. And that's what is so...
Will you send me a copy of that?
I will. I'll send you the actual article that came out September 2021 from the FBI that showed an uptick in just Black hate crimes in the state of Maryland. So that was really disconcerting for me, because all we've talked about is the Asian hate crime and Jewish hate crime. And it's like the hate crime against Black folks, it's okay. So they don't talk about it anymore. It's like it's just normalized. So they're not even mentioning it until it's brought up in a report like we're doing today.
I will do my bit of research. I'll ask because the police department tracks hate crimes. I will ask them what the statistics are, how they break down.
I'll send you the report. I'll send you the report from the FBI that looked at Maryland, looked at all states, but Maryland predominantly had double the amount in 2020, and then of those, the majority were against Black folks, and this is just our state, which is like, wow.
Dr. Yvette, one of my issues, hate crimes are hate crime, no matter who's against. The sad issue is that it's treated differently.
Yes.
That to me seems to be a problem. If we can see it's a hate crime, period. Asian, black, Jewish, whatever. If it's a hate crime, treat it the same. But it's not treated the same. That's why it seems like it's split between Asian crime, Jewish crime, or black crime. This is ridiculous.
That's true. A hate crime is a hate crime.
I will look at my own statistics. I mean, I can look at the crimes. I can look at, how many were solved, what if there is a disproportionality. I'll get you the data, and we can look at Montgomery County through that lens.
Wonderful, because they gave the state of Maryland, so Montgomery County, we'll see. I would love to see some of those records. And there was a few more questions that I wanted to ask, and then Paul, I want you to chime in on some of the other questions. So this is one we go to Sid, because we answered most of the ones. We didn't go to gun violence, because Paul and I had a great conversation. So whatever I'm not sure if we should even ask what is your take on that, because we both feel, and I personally feel this, is it's not the guns, it's the people behind the guns that we have to deal with, the mental health issues that exist. And Paul said something very interesting that we don't really think about, is that in a community as we are, people should see when something's having difficulties and act upon that. But we are so caught up into our own little worlds, and no one's even looking at it. And even if they do, there's no place to refer them for the mental health issues.
I read a bit of the news story about the kid who shot those folks out out west there, and it was like, good Lord. In Texas. The father was talking about his son and talking about how he was in trouble, and there were all these signs. And my first reaction was, and he had no place to take him. And that's one of the problems, is there are just not enough places. People need to, I don't think everybody knows all the resources that Montgomery County has, but even with everything we have, we don't have enough. And one of the things I'm going to be proposing in my next budget, or halfway through the year, depending what finances look like, is that we actually, reinstate the mental health clinics. In the old days, in the 60s and 70s, there were mental health clinics in the county where a person could, bring their child in and say, we need to talk to a psychologist or, a therapist. And sometimes the whole family would wind up going, sometimes only the kid or a couple of people. But we don't have that ready access to it. And we need to provide that ready access. This is, for all the focus on kids, most of the violent acts are committed by people who aren't in school, not by people who are in school. And they're committed against people who aren't in school, and typically against young adults, which is really scary. And the other disturbing thing about these murders, like, we've solved, I think, all 14 murders now, right? We've solved them because they're all people who knew each other.
Right.
And so there's enough of a trail, and how people have gotten to this insane place where if you have a beef with somebody, that your solution to a beef is you shoot somebody. When I was growing up, if you and somebody else had an argument or disagreement, it was usually a fight, but the fight didn't come with weapons.
Yeah, those fighting days are over.
No one died from it. You left home with a few bruises and you were done. So there's a question that came in on YouTube really quick. Let me grab this real quick, Paul.
Okay.
This came from YouTube, and it says, County Executive Marc Elrich, why did you promise to remove the armed police from MCPS, yet allow them to return into the school building with the CEO 2.0? Also, where are the social workers that you promised the students?
So we all thought we were going to hire social workers. The school system had the money. They set out to hire people. They weren't able to hire people, and they are not alone. I've talked to people in the University of Maryland, the folks who deal with mental health issues there. They can't find the workers. Nobody was able to find the workers. Dr. McKnight, they were ready to pay and put the money into this. They've been able to hire very slowly. I think in the fall they had, they were in single digits. I think now they're closer to, I don't know what the latest number is, but it was certainly more substantial. I'm pretty confident they'll have those workers there by the fall. But yeah, I'll say the problem for the schools was, absent what we said we were going to do. I mean, this was part of a deal. We would hire the social workers and the police would come out, and we would hope that the social worker or the people who intervene in interpersonal disputes, they could be dispute resolution people. Our hope was they would be in place. And when they weren't in place, it was kind of hard to go to the community and say, okay, we're not going to put in our replacement thing, and we're not going to bring back any form of policing. And I will say that Dr. McKnight and I were pretty in tune when she first told me what they were thinking about doing. My two questions were no patrolling halls, because that's the thing that gives the appearance that the kids are under patrol,
right?
And that the officers would not do school discipline, which, in fairness to the officers, the calls for school discipline were triggered by the principals, by the administrative staff.
Yeah.
And so the officers did, and unfortunately they weren't supposed to do it. Even under the old MOU, they were not supposed to be doing school discipline. They got into doing the school discipline, and that shouldn't have happened. But Dr. McKnight has said it is not going to happen this time. They will not be doing school discipline. They're not doing minor marijuana stuff, which is another big deal, because when you stop bringing all these kids into the criminal justice system for minor amounts of marijuana, that dramatically changed the number of police encounters with minority students in schools. It'll be interesting to see at the end of this year what those numbers look like under this 2.0 version. Have they really brought down the encounters? Are they really not doing discipline? And, are they not patrolling halls? I know she shared the same commitment I did to that. I could not in good faith say we weren't going to do anything in the face of the uptick in violence, but I still don't want the police doing what they shouldn't be doing. They can respond to police calls. I expect police to respond to serious fights for their injuries, to rape, molestation, all that other kind of stuff. But because you won't shut up, maybe not. That's not something the police should be involved in.
We have, this is no secret that when we talk about, and you've gotten this question before about the Moses Cemetery.
Yep.
And it's a very sensitive subject for myself personally also, just to be transparent with that. What is your take on the transaction between what the Moses Cemetery is going on and has gone on? What, just really want you to respond from that itself, because there are statements about, we know there's bodies being found, but then the county says it wasn't, and things like that. So what is your take on all that?
I don't believe bodies were found. They did first place, they're not excavating where the Moses Cemetery is. I want to be clear about this. Moses Cemetery was bought by, I forget, it was White's Tabernacle, but it was part of a benevolent society or burial society that had a cemetery in Tenleytown, DC. And when they decided in DC in the early 1900s to rezone the place, and just miraculously that cemetery no longer fit in, the folks in that benevolent society bought a lot on off of Westbard Road, and that lot is now lot 175 and 177, and that's where the cemetery was. It shows up in maps there. It shows up in historical documents there. That is absolutely, it shows up in the deed. That's the two lots that were owned by that. They were never on the lot where the storage building is being built. That is not Moses Cemetery. Moses Cemetery is on those two lots. The owner of those lots, or the cemetery, whoever owned the Benevolent Society, sold that lot to a developer. The developer did not follow the law in terms of disinterring people or moving people. We have no idea whether they're piled up against Westbard Avenue and making up the underpinnings of that slope that goes down there where the driveway is. There's no question whatsoever that that cemetery was desecrated, destroyed, possibly bodies relocated, possibly not relocated. And that is now the driveway that serves the apartment building over there. There's no other way to get into the building but for the driveway. But there's a part of it in the back that goes to where the creek is that's flat and is actually could be used as memorialization and would not affect the entrances to the building at all. And I even went into the building to see whether there's other ways to get into the building, and there aren't. So
but people said they found bodies on River Road.
Well, yeah. Okay, so the historical documentation says that slave owners discarded bodies often by tossing them in the woods on River Road. But that's true for all of River Road. This place is not a particular cemetery. And just to further clarify things, there are 1949 photographs that show already in 1949 a very large building had been built where the storage building is going to be. So that lot, if there were bodies there ever, they were cleared out once that first building got built. This building isn't going into a forest, isn't going on to land that was virgin until these guys built the building. I'll show you the pictures of the buildings that were there in 1949. And it'll be pretty clear that even if there was something there, it was eradicated then. But it's still not Moses Cemetery. It may be the random throwing of bodies, but it's sure not a cemetery. Anyway, I don't have the authority to condemn property. And the state's attorney came out and was well aware of the issue, and they are not violating the terms of what Park and Planning told them they had to do. In fact, they went farther than what Park and Planning had to do. It doesn't mean there were never bodies there, but nobody found any bodies when they were digging up from there. Second thing is the church came to that area after the cemetery was there. This is not a church cemetery. This is a benevolent society. The same group has a cemetery on Falls Road. You've probably read about the battle about the Beltway widening. It's another group from the same group. I've talked to people up there. Some of the members of their family were actually buried in the cemetery down on River Road in Westport. And I've talked to folks in the Black community who had neither association, but who belonged to that benevolent society and had family members buried there. So I'll tell you what I proposed if you want to hear it.
I do.
Yes,
you can tell me whether you think I'm crazy or not. So I've tried to get people to get together. I cannot force Park and Planning to come to a meeting, and I cannot force HOC to come to a meeting. HOC now says that as long as there's a lawsuit, they can't sit down and talk with anybody. And Park and Planning is not going to give the land to the church. And I will say that in the beginning, and the thing I signed on to was absolutely memorializing what used to be a cemetery there, not giving the land to anybody else. The key issue to me is who decides memorialization and how you memorialize it.
Right.
I will say Park and Planning is impossible to work with. They have actually said we're the experts in memorialization. You know, it'd be one thing if you were memorializing something for which there were no descendants, but you're talking about memorializing for something that's part of a living community. And the idea that you don't even think they should be part of this discussion is offensive to me. So what I proposed doing was basically to convene a group that would have 4 members from the Macedonia Church, 4 members from the other benevolent society farther up on Falls Road. I would have 4 members from either the Black Ministers Conference or the NAACP. These would be the only voting members of the committee. They would be charged with deciding the best way to memorialize the cemetery on that site. Then I proposed that the Park and Planning be allowed to put somebody on there, technical advisor. You know, there are things with the stream that have to be protected. It does have to be restored, and the stream doesn't interfere with the cemetery because it's on the edge of it. It's not in the middle of it. I don't know if you know, but at one point the cemetery actually sold the rights to WSSC to put a giant pipe through the middle of the cemetery.
No, I did not know
Oh
that.
yes, oh yeah. That goes back before they sold it to the developer. But I wanted to put one person who would be somebody from Park and Planning. I said there'd be an ex officiary member from the administration and from the council, and that I would pay for a consultant who's an expert in memorialization, and the committee could pick who the consultant was. I would not tell them who it was. I was very clear that nobody in the government would have anything to say about this, that the committee would make a recommendation and it would go to the council, because the council is the only one that can tell Park and Planning what to do. Through the budget, the council could say, we want you to memorialize this parcel of land. This is the money we will give you to memorialize it, and tell Park and Planning what to do and how to do it. They could leave it to Park and Planning, but they could also just as easily say, we like this community plan and this is what we want you to put there. That is the only way I can think of getting this out of this, because
again, it's one of those things, like you said, like I said before, it doesn't end with you, and it may not start with you. There's a whole lot of people involved in this that isn't at the table, or isn't being heard, or just refusing to come to the table. And that is hurtful. It is for the people who are listening to the crumbs of this conversation. It's just, it's head shaking.
So that's why I thought my solution was kind of elegantly simple. It takes all of us white folks out of the equation. We're not making any decisions. We're putting it in the hands of the Black community. There are at least 2 descendant groups that have a direct stake in a burial place. And we've got the Black Ministers Conference, who I believe could be good arbitrators in terms of deciding how do we deal with this property. And then we have a council which could actually take the results of this and mandate what they want done. And it would be basically us doing what the community tells us is the best way of handling memorialization. I thought, because that's the only way if I can't get people to talk to each other, and if certain people in the church are going to insist that they have to be given the property, which nobody is going to give them, we're either going to not memorialize this and this is going to sit stagnant forever. I offered to do the radio survey, the ground penetrating radar survey, so we could find out what's underneath there. I told Marcia, you can pick the company that does it. She said, I don't want you to do it. So I can't even do things that are helpful, which I would like to do. I think convening this is the only way I can think of. I don't know any other way to solve this, because I can't. If she thinks I can fire Mike Riley, I can't. She thinks I can seize Park and Planning property, I can't. No matter how many times I say I can't, she insists that I can have these magical powers. I am the county executive. I am not God, and I'm not a dictator. And I think my proposal's fair.
That kind of goes back to one of our questions, and Dr. Boy, it's like, what is the most important issue facing the county executive today that you can see that's really you're running up against?
Well, other than this issue, I think housing is the problem.
And this is a big issue, because we have a lot of Black
issue.
One issue, and
Yes.
they are one issue voters. They're one issue voters. So I'm glad you're addressing this, because we do have, it's a big issue.
Look, if somebody has a better idea of how to put together a group, I thought that putting together 3 parties who have in common having a Black heritage in Montgomery County and giving them the opportunity to look at this injustice and say what kind of memorial belongs here is the only sensible way to solve this problem. And I leave it to others to do all the details, because like I said, I'm sympathetic. I should not be the one to prescribe what a memorial looks like. That is for the community to decide. And I'm willing to abide. I'm sure everybody's going to want a memorial that is meaningful and that actually tells a story and, has value to the community. And I trust all these people to be able to do that collectively. And taking us out of it, my group of people from this cohort out of any decision making, to me, would be a helpful thing. So everybody feels like they own it and they don't have to worry about what, any of us coming in and telling them we have a better idea for memorialization. the best idea will come out of the community. But of the other big problems are affordable housing in Montgomery County. I mean, people talk about it a lot. The fact is, we don't do what we say we're doing. People think, we
Yeah.
Montgomery County will say, and people still say it, we have the MPDU program, moderately priced dwelling units. For you who don't know what it is, it serves people mostly between $60,000 and $75,000 incomes. Doesn't serve people below that unless we make special deals with developers. And oddly enough, it doesn't serve people who make more than that. But in the market, like in Bethesda, if you make $100,000, you will not find a 2-bedroom apartment in any new building that we're building. And so we tell people that the MPDU program is a national model, and Montgomery County is a national model. The MPDU program has 100 units under control in a county of 1.1 million people, in a county with 30,000 households, mostly people of color, earning less than $30,000 and not able to afford it, and the folks earning up to $50,000 who are also paying half their income for rent. You have all these groups that can't afford it, and then we say we have a model program. And Park and Planning tells us that we had 43,000 or something affordable units without controls. They call it naturally occurring. In 2000, we lost half of it. By 2022, we'll lose another 11,000 by 2030. That's what's the reality of what's happening. And their answer to this is Thrive, which has no plan for affordable housing, just says the government should do something.
Correct.
Those are bold action words if I ever heard them. And focuses on MPDUs, which don't serve the lower income folks who are already here. And then on top of all that bad news, they tell you that 40,000 households come here by 2030. 30,000 households need subsidy. Of the 30,000 households, 20,000 will earn less than $50,000. Again, people who aren't eligible for what we do. So we have a huge problem, and people are fiddling while Rome burns.
I do know that you have been very supportive for African American health. I do know you've been very supportive of keeping funding different programs that has worked with community health for African Americans, because we have such a different type of sicknesses, whether it be diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, along
I got
with
those things.
Yeah.
You hit my list.
Yeah. So I do know you have championed that, and it has helped a lot with getting people on the right place to getting healthy. And as people listening who are African American and Black America, if you're not healthy, you can't vote. So if you want to be, you can't have both. You can't be sick and vote. You got to be healthy and vote. So you want to. He's probably got to go, Dr. Yvette. So you want to ask the last question?
Before we leave, Mark, just one of the questions just came in, because we have people watching on Facebook Live and also YouTube, and I want to thank you all out there for putting your questions in and beforehand. And there's one other question that just came through, actually a few minutes ago, but one says, how do you prevent school shootings, which is the main component of school safety? Instead, students need mental health resources and social support so they do not resort to violence. Now, you kind of talked about that, the mental health, but this question came in after you spoke about that. So do you want to elaborate more on that or say anything else to that?
Well,
so how
the school system historically has never had the level of social workers or true counselors, not guidance counselors, but like human counselors. And those two terms get confused sometimes. When we use the word counselor, people mean different things by it. But it's really important that we have people in the schools, and we do not meet the standards, the national standards for how many of these folks we should have per population. So we need to try to get ourselves in line with just the national standards, which are hardly like the strictest things in the world. And then we need to make sure that, and I've said this multiple times, you cannot solve all these problems in school. And we've got this huge socioeconomic mess out there of power called poverty. And I gave you a brief glimpse of, what the households look like in Montgomery County. And of course, these are primarily people of color. So there you go. People of color, disproportionately poor. And what the impact of poverty on children is severe. When people when families struggle, when families are in stress over, not being able to pay rent, not being able to buy enough food, those struggles spill over and it affects children. I grew up, we all know when our parents are fighting, we all know they're fighting, we all know what they're fighting about. And it has to be damn destabilizing for a kid to hear their parents talking about where are we going to live next month? What are we going to do about rent?
Right.
And then to have kids who are hungry coming to school, having families making choice between food and rent, and all these other social underpinnings, and then to think that somehow the schools are miraculously going to fix this problem. The schools can do a lot, but we as politicians, this is why I obsess over putting more money into early childhood education. It's why I pumped up schools 149 million this year when the budget allowed me to do it. We've got to make investments both in the schools, but we've got to make sure that families are secure. That's why I support things like rent stabilization, because people need not to move. People don't realize how damaging mobility is. People think of upward mobility like that's a good thing. But when I'm talking about school mobility, when you go through 5 different schools in 5 years because your parents are moving, not because they're upwardly mobile and taking advantage of great new opportunities, but because they're trying to find the next lowest rent apartment they can afford to live in, all of that is destabilizing. And it also affects parents' engagement in the community. If you don't think you're going to be there, you automatically, you're going to feel like, why would I invest my time if you have the time? That assumes you're working one job and you're home in the evening and could say, I could go to a PTA meeting or watch TV. A lot of people don't have that option. But if you are moving and things are unstable, it is hard to vest yourself in the community. The whole beauty of ownership, which is why I've been pushing in Tacoma Park. I did a couple of help tenants convert their buildings from rental to ownership by the tenants. The whole point of the ownership is that once you own something, you are rooted in that community, and then the issues that face that community every day become your issue because now that I own there, you're going to be there. I was once working with a tenant group, and I'm in the basement of their apartment building. And we're talking about it, and I said, I was your council member. I said, I am your council member. And I said, and this apartment was actually behind my house, and it's a big apartment building. And they were like, and I said, you've never come to me about the crime on this street out here. You never complain about the dealers. You've never asked me to do anything to improve your quality of life. And I said, the moment you become owners of these apartments, you're going to be visiting me and telling me we're taxpayers and we want you to do something about it.
Right.
I don't think people realize how destabilizing it is not to own. And I'll say that Thomas Jefferson, flaws and all, one of Jefferson's comments about why his concern about why he favored farmers over urban was that in the cities you had masses of people who didn't own anything and therefore had no stake in society. And that his fear was they would rise up against the ruling class because they have no reason to protect the system the way it is. And while that's kind of an extreme formulation of it, and maybe more true in the 19th century or 18th century than it is now, it is still a fundamental truth. People who do not have a stake in society engage differently with society. It goes to, why would I vote if I don't believe anything's going to change? And my experience in America would tell me, voting, not such a good remedy for social problems. So I actually try to find ways to help people get a stake in society. All the housing deals we're doing are including ownership units. I've been proselytizing to the nonprofits who do rental to please start shifting focus to more ownership. Buy a building, own it for 5 years. Educate the tenants, help people clean up their credit, train them in what it means to manage a building, and then sell them the building, and then you get your money back and go buy another building and do a conversion process. I think the more people own here, the more we can help people own, the more we'll stabilize the community, and the more people will feel like I've got a stake here and I'm going to start participating and you're going to hear my voice. And damn it, I'm a taxpayer. You're going to pay attention to me. I don't think I'm oversimplifying. I know sometimes I've upset some people by saying that.
Well, you just mentioned buying buildings. Now, is that opportunity available for people of color, Black folks? Because I don't think
Is
enough
which
of
op-
us know
yeah.
about
No,
buying a building, and is that available to Black folks? I would love to buy a
It's
building
available
and
to any.
sell it out.
it's
What program is doing
Look,
this so that
it's available.
others out there can get involved?
So there's a right of first refusal. So if your building goes up for sale, you have a timeline for um, saying you're interested in buying the building, and then you have a timeline for doing your due diligence to make sure you want to do it. So I tell you what I used to do in Tacoma Park. Um, I had friends who were in the affordable housing sphere in DC, and they taught me how they did conversions. And I was a council member, I had a job, but I started doing this. I'd meet with tenants, I'd ask, they would have already said they were interested in owning their buildings. I would talk to them about what was involved. I would get 2 years of operating expenses from the landlord because the landlord had to provide it.
right.
The county then would actually do inspections and identify what systems we'd have to replace. I get estimates on what it would take to get the systems replaced, and I put together a budget. And invariably, rehabbing a building, unless it's in dire condition, you wound up paying about what you paid in rent. Because if you think about it, you've got some new bills to pay, like for renovations, windows, and stuff like that. But there's nobody taking a profit out of the building. And so you're profiting. And oh, by the way, because now you own it, you also get a tax break. So you can deduct your interest and your property taxes. So it's a net positive for people. And so if people were ready, I would, present it to them. I'd show them budgets, and I said, if you're interested, here's a list of people who do this kind of consulting. And the reason why I did it first is that everybody I knew who consulted wanted down payment money, advance money, like $500 or $2,000 a unit. And low income people aren't about to put $500 unrefundable on a line if they don't know they're going to wind up with it. So I did kind of preliminary footwork to see whether it was feasible. And I would be talking to my friends who actually knew this stuff, so I could be relatively sure that I wasn't, not understanding what the heck I was doing. And then once we knew that, I would say, here, pick one and use them to do your conversion. And I was able to do that a few times in Tacoma Park. It was one of the happiest things I ever did. I made owners from people. But, telling somebody you're going to buy a $2 million building or an $11 million building who struggles to pay rent, it's like, you got to be kidding me. So you have to overcome all that. But I felt like I was a low risk because they weren't paying me anything. This was just, I've given you the general blueprint, operationalize it. So today, there are more resources in the county. The law is there. I intend to make the law a little bit stronger than it is now in terms of protecting the right to exercise the right.
And that's what I know. A lot of people have tried it, and their refusal is also it seems to be unequal, and I think that's what people run into. That's why I think we want to make the law a little bit tighter, because a lot of people get turned away and then it's never really the reasons why, right?
And then we need lenders, and there are some community lenders now who will look at people and not see them as credit risks, but understand that you can educate people and put them in a position where they can take this on. So I'm a big believer in this. I mean, I'd like to do more. Hopefully, we'll have more opportunities. But when we do these projects, I have put 18 properties up for sale, and we're not looking for money for the land. We want somebody to come in and develop them as affordable. These are going to be, primarily completely affordable. I'm not going to do this stuff where I bring in a developer and I get 15 or maybe, if I'm lucky, 30% of the units affordable and everything else is high end. And so we'll be able to create more and more affordability. And we're asking people in every instance to provide a component of ownership. I just reviewed a project the other day that came in from one of our partners, and they had a rental section, they had rental pieces of it, and they had ownership pieces of it. And I was really happy with that.
Do you have minority developers? Is it equal throughout the county, or is it unequal?
Oh, I mean, the developers, the ones who can afford to buy these big parcels are primarily not minority developers. I'm having a meeting with one next week. So, we'll see how that goes. Minority developers don't necessarily make different economic decisions than majority developers. There is no magic to having, deciding you're going to do affordable housing for everybody. It's not strictly a racial division. It's the nature of the beast, and some people go for the max every time. But my goal is to make sure that we bring in people who understand. That I will say, when we're getting offers on stuff, people understand what we're asking for. I'm not getting any of these proposals that I'm looking at and saying, "Are you kidding me?" So I'm feeling pretty good about this. And we're involved in a project in Emery Grove that you guys will surely like. Emery Grove is an historic Black community that underwent urban removal at a period of time, and that community was decimated, put in miserable housing, and the land is largely fallow, the rest of it. So the county, Park and Planning, and HOC are teaming up, and with the church up there, Tim Warner's church, and we are planning a community that'll probably be 450, 500 units. It's going to be, a community project, not done by any of us, on our own, as a gift to the community. The community is going to be involved in it, and the goal is to restore the Emery Grove community, descendants, and, new people into something of large scale that'll be, permanent and decent, and, bring a level of housing back to them that they haven't had. And that's one of the most exciting things I'm involved in. I love this. And we're just, we're putting the county land into the deal. We don't have debt on it. We don't have any use for it. And it's sort of like, you could exaggerate it and call it reparations, but it's certainly a repayment in some form of,
Mark, before we go, we're going to have the hard break, and I'm going to say thank you before we have to cut you off, because I'm sure we're at a time. Thank you so much, Mark, for being on our show today. Well, I'd love to have you back sooner more than later. Dr. Yvette?
Yeah, well, well, actually, one last thing, and this is not a political show, but someone asked, one of our young voters who just graduated from college, she's watching now, and she sent me a message saying, she wants to hear from you of why should someone just coming out of college who's aspiring and starting their career, why should they vote for you as county executive?
I'll give you a couple of reasons. One, I have a very active economic development program. We haven't done anything on the scale. We haven't made the effort to create a partnership between a university to drive a job, drive our jobs in this county. We've just relied on telling people we've got empty buildings, come here and occupy them. And I'm changing that. I'm more active, I think, probably than anybody's been in trying to drive an economy here that serves you. So you should be able to find decent jobs here and additional education opportunities. And I'm working on changing what we do with housing, because if you're a young person getting out of college, you maybe fall in that dangerous zone where somebody might pay you more than $70,000, but they're not going to pay you enough to get into a market rate unit in Bethesda, and so you're going to be stuck in no person's land. And I'm determined to start adopting policies that address the broader range of need in Montgomery County, so that you can look at this county and feel there are people here who are going to work to make sure you have a future here. That's what I would tell you.
Can I have the Verizon building near Silver Spring? I think it's going towards. Who owns that building? Can I have it for school?
Which Verizon building?
It's off of 29 going towards Silver Spring, past Burtonsville.
Oh yes, I've been looking at that building too. Yeah, right up 29. The Verizon.
I'm sure it's going to get, Park and Planning is rezoning, doing a new master plan for that area. I'm sure it's going to attract investors who will be very interested in the additional density and what they can do with it if Verizon's going to sell it. I don't know if Verizon's going to sell it.
Yeah, because they moved across the street and they built that whole new building over by Tech Road. Yeah.
And what about the Discovery building?
Buyers.
What about the Discovery
The
Building?
Discovery
What's going on
Building?
with that Discovery Building? And downtown
You've got
Silver Spring.
Children's Hospital in Discovery Building.
Ah,
Children's
okay.
Hospital is running programs out of there now. But here's another interesting thing. The Discovery owned a building on East West Highway. It used to be Caldor for that brief year when Caldor came to Silver Spring. And it's right by Noah, kind of across the street, but closer to Georgia Avenue. And we are doing a study in conjunction with the developer to see whether we can locate a center for training for biopharma manufacturing. Here's another example of a place where we might be able to train people for the jobs that are coming into the county. And so if the study bears out, we will work out a deal where this becomes a center for training for biomanufacturing. So those are
Nice,
to
nice.
me, I never thought I'd be so involved in development, but it's actually kind of interesting, and it's good to be able to bring an intentionality to it. I'm not just interested in putting a building on something.
I know this is do you feel it's feasible for Montgomery County to charter an African American school for kids who are not doing well or feel safe in the other MCP schools?
I don't know what MCP's policy is on charters now. I thought they had changed it so it was less restrictive than it used to be. So I guess it probably would depend on what the school would propose teaching and how they'd propose teaching it, because there are state standards, and what the MCP feels about the charter. But I don't know, because this is out of my pay lane.
Well, I'm
They
glad I
still
asked.
do have charters, but I don't think you can have
Pardon
them
me?
for one group. They still have charters, but I don't think you'd have them for one group or the other. It has to be open to all students if it's going to be a county-funded charter program. If it's a private school, you can actually do some of those things. But as a charter school, it's been that charter school review process. And I don't think they've changed much, but unfortunately, you can't have all Black, all girls, or anything like that. It has to be open to everybody if it's a charter school funded by the county and the state. Private school,
Nope.
You can do almost anything you want for private. But so, Mark, I want to thank you so much. Do you any more last words, Dr. Dyer, before I close off and tell Mark again? I want to thank him so much.
We got to get him home safe, and it's getting late, but we'll just have him back on another time.
Yeah, I will ask you a favor. I would ask if you ponder what I suggested about Moses, I would love to talk to some people in the community. I mean, I know what Marcia feels. Right. I'd like to talk to other people, because this is not exclusively their issue. To me, this is truly a Black community issue, and I want to get this done. I started out 4 years ago thinking I could get this thing memorialized, and we had a working relationship, and we were working toward memorialization. Apparently it's not their interest right now, their ownership. I want to get the memorialization done. To me, the most important thing is that what goes on that property reflects the Black community, and most importantly, reflects the history of what was done there. I will tell you that Marcia and I have no disagreement about the travesty that was done there, both pre-sale to the owner and the history of this county, and what the owner did and what followed after that. But I'm focused on, the one thing I can do is figure out a way to memorialize it. And I want partners who we can make this thing happen with.
It actually sounds like we got to get a hold of Park and Planning. Park and Planning seems to be the dam that's holding us up.
There's an easier workaround. I mean, the council, nobody's said anything, but you notice that they've never participated in this discussion.
Nope.
But what I will say is that if we agreed we would create this commission, and the council agreed to do that, which I think, frankly, is safe, because you're not meddling in this, and you're not trying to direct an outcome, and just simply create the commission and let them create the outcome and fund the outcome, Park and Planning becomes sort of irrelevant, because the county says, this is what we want on our property over here. This is how we think this should be done. I'm sure the county, with the power of the budget, could ensure that project got done the way the county wanted it done. And then Park and Planning, I'm sure, will find a way to do it. But I think the important thing is the council really is even more of a decision maker than I am on this. They're even the final word on a budget. So when I submit a budget, the council produces the final version of the budget. So if we all agreed that we want to memorialize and we all agreed we'll create this independent body to do it, I think we get where we need to go.
Well, we'll try to make
But
some
let
of
me know
those
if you think I'm off base.
happen. I really like that idea. Paul, I don't know where you stand on that, but I like that idea.
Well, I've talked about, the councilmen and the people who are on this board, and I actually think they should be outed, because they're not putting the foot into the work. And this is a single vote issue for African Americans. And if you're not going to do this, I don't care what else you could do. You're done. It's time for you to go.
Look, I feel like I've been abandoned on a raft here. I think everybody's happy to see me get beat up and suffer with it. And I will say this.
You ought to call them out, Mark. You ought to name names.
We're going to send you a life jacket. We're going to send you a life jacket.
Everybody can figure out what's going on. I mean, to me, the important thing is, I don't like the way I get treated necessarily, but it doesn't make what Marcia's fighting over doesn't make the underlying cause right.
Right.
I may not like how, what I'm subjected to in the process, but there's a fundamental justice or an injustice that was done here and an opportunity to create a justice. And so I can't temper my involvement based on how I feel about how I'm treated. I will try to get a just solution one way or the other.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. We'll send you a life jacket, and hopefully we can make this happen, because I think that single vote issue is really important to us Black folks. And so we want to thank Marc Elrich for giving us the time this evening, and actually giving us a little bit more time than we were allotted for. And we want to thank Afrique Today as well. And I just have a few announcements that we're going to make. And then, Mark, before I finish, did you have any last comments that you want to say to the audience out here today?
I think, people, can write into my office. I'm happy to, if people have questions about things. I'm always interested in, what are the issues out there? And, the more I understand how people experience things, it helps me. I told people when I was campaigning, and I feel the same way now, I think I have good instincts, but I don't walk in your shoes. And so I feel like I know I have a general idea of what needs to be done, but I'm not going to tell people that this is what I'm going to do. I would prefer for people to let me know, what do you think needs to be done? And that's the kind of guidance that I look to take is, tell me what your real experience is, because I don't have those. My experiences are different. I'm all too aware of that. My kids' experience,
I know,
and I bit more like yours.
Yeah, and I tell you, we go back way, and you have never changed that position, and I want to thank you for that. Even though there was one issue I still want to get rid of, but I won't go to that tonight. Yep. So that issue. So. But Mark, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank Afrique Today. And I just want to make a few announcements, because we talked about the Moses Cemetery, because tomorrow, June 11th, at the American University, they have an opening exhibit tomorrow. I just got this through about the African River Road community and the desecration of the Moses African Cemetery. It's called The Bridge That Carried Us Over. So if people want to go out and hear what they have to say tomorrow, it's going to be at the American University exhibit. It's going to be at the Captain Arts Center at 6 to 9 tomorrow. 6 to 9 tomorrow. And then we have something for the kids tomorrow. We have a book fair. It's the National Black Child Book Fair. That's going to be tomorrow from 10 to 3 o'clock. And that's going to be at Ascension Church in downtown Silver Spring, which is at 633 Sligo Avenue, 633 Sligo Avenue. Hope to see you there. We are going to be giving a tribute to a wonderful author and poet, Ellery's Greenfield, who unfortunately passed last year at the end of the year. So we're going to do a tribute to Ellery's Greenfield at 10 o'clock prompt. So we hope to see you out tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of Black authors out there, so you can meet some of the Black authors who are writing books for us and with people who look like us. There's not too many Black authors out there that have these kind of books. I learned something last night, just a one tidbit. They say, what faces do you see in the book most? If you don't see a white face on the book, the next most commonly seen on a cover is animals. So imagine when a young Black person is going to look for a book, it's either a white face or an animal that they'll see on a book cover, not someone who looks like you or myself. So we are going to be honoring and having Black authors out tomorrow. So please, if you want to join us and have your children come out, please come out again to the National Black Child Book Tour, which is in its 4th year, and we're really excited to be co-hosting that on behalf of Gapbuster. So I want to again thank Marc for being on the show today. I want to definitely thank my co-host today, Dr. Dyer, Dr. Paul Dyer. You're wonderful as always. And I want to thank my audience who has been here today, and also all the questions that have come in. And I think this is a great show. We have a lot of people watching, and so this is also recorded. So please, you can also share it afterwards to share it with people. It is recorded. So please, after it's downloaded, share it. And you also be on Afrique Today. And I'm not sure if you're still there, Marc. How can people get in touch with you if you're still there? Are you still there?
No, he said call his office. You can always write into his office.
Okay. So you can call or write into his office. So the office number to the county executive, I think, is 311. You can call 311 if you live in Montgomery County. And also 240, I think it's 777-30311. So you can also call that number and you ask for the county executive's office or send in a question. And I know the email is OCE, Office of County Executive, at Montgomery County Government, at Montgomery County, Maryland, MD.gov. So that's OCE, Office of County Executive, at Montgomery County Government, MD.gov. So please, if you want to email, you can email or you can call your questions in. So without further ado, we want to thank you all for staying so long and watching. We did go over time, but I think having the county executive with us tonight was very important. And I want to thank you all for all your questions and being participating in this dialogue tonight. Thank you so much. And thanks again, Afrique Today.